Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. If you're a woman leader, either in or outside the home, please take the next hour to learn how to protect your mental well-being. The stress of leading others, taking care of family and friends, managing up and down professionally, well, it can take its toll, especially when you are focused on everyone but you. Our guest today tells us how to set boundaries for ourselves and for others so that our well-being is not lost. And men, you should listen closely too, so that you can be a help and not a hindrance to the women in your life. Another View is next, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we've decided to focus on the mental well-being of women leaders. Female leadership takes many forms, but what's actually missing is being focused on the mental health of the leader. Here to help us get on the path to better mental health is Charese Josie. She is a licensed clinical social worker and therapist who specializes in treating adult women leaders through her practice, CJ Counseling and Consulting. Hi, Charese. How are you?
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining me today. So you work with women leaders. Why this particular group of professional women? And that could be either in the home or external. Yeah. But why professional women?
Absolutely. When I started my career, I started working with children. And as I navigated the adult life, I realized that children were a safe space for me not to understand myself. And as I started going through relationships, personal, professionally, there was a common theme of me feeling like I'm misunderstood and have to constantly defend who I am. And I realized I'm not alone. There's a lot of professional women out here, whether you're working at home or you're working at a 9 to 5, that still feel like, why do I feel misunderstood with my feelings? How can I express myself? Why is it not coming across effectively? Mm-hmm. And when I started to delve more in that population, I said, there's a need here. This is my target. This is who I want to focus on.
So are there particular stressors or things that happen to women leaders that are different maybe from others who may be seeking mental well-being?
Yeah, there's this public pressure, right? And it's whether people are actually looking at us or we feel we're being looked at. Because we told someone that we got this job. We told someone, guess what? I'm the director, the supervisor, someone. So now there's this expectation that we're going to do well. And that our internal dialogue starts to get louder and louder and louder, which means that pressure we're putting on ourselves gets more intense. And now we feel like we're battling between the external and the internal. And then what do? We focus. We start to do task-oriented things to get through. And if I complete this task, then I must be doing a good job.
If I can check it off my to-do list.
If I can check it off, I'm doing good. But then when I get back into the emotions, back into the relationships, well, how come I'm not doing good anymore? Because that part was never nurtured, right? We got into the box checking part of life, right? And then those start to bump head at some time. At some point, it's going to bump heads because some part of us is not being nurtured. Right. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I learned about women leaders and high professional women, this is goal focused, ambitious women. So if that's you, that's who we're talking to. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's that we want to do things. Right. We want to keep moving. There's a battle between the emotions and what we're doing, and it gets complex. And we don't like to honor our complexities. Right? There's a part of me who's go-getter, professional. There's a part of me who wants to sit around and cry. There's a part of me that don't want to do anything. Right?
And we don't recognize that that's okay.
That's okay.
To have all three.
All three. We might got 4 or 5, right? We just haven't met those parts yet, right? It might be more, right? There's a younger child in me that wants to be nurtured by my parents. I want somebody still tell me I'm doing a good job. Even at my age and whatever I've succeeded, I need someone to still tell me I'm doing a good job.
You know, there's a saying that you see it on social media a lot where people say you need to check in with your strong friends.
Yes.
You know, what does that mean to you when you hear that?
When you check in with your strong friends, I want you to sit down and wait for an answer. Don't let them off the hook. Fine is not okay. Good is not okay. If your strong friend says, I'm good, tell me what good means. And we need to be okay with silence. Just wait. Oh, you really want to know? I really want to know. How are you fine? Fine. What does fine mean? And we need to wait. We need to be okay with silence and say, what I'm doing is creating a space for us.
Do you think sometimes people are afraid to create that space because then, especially if they see that friend as being the superwoman, right, that it causes more anxiety for them, you know, for the other person, to say, oh my gosh, if she's not okay, what does that mean for me, you know?
Yes, and that's where we get back into the doing, right? So people don't really want to hear the answer. I think the question is genuine, right? How are you? Sometimes it's genuine, right? How are you? But if you're really close with someone, you really want to know how they are, but then there's this pressure, wait, am I supposed to do something with it? What do I do with this information if you're not okay? Here's a quick tip. You can ask. You can ask, how can I support you? What do you need from me? Okay, I can just check in on you. I can just hold space for you and just check in. And you have the option of sharing with me or not. I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you. And let them have the freedom of sharing if they choose to or not. That's the space and safety that people want.
So how does the professional strong woman know that she may be having some issues that need deeper thought or deeper exploration?
That's a good question. We all have blind spots. All of us, right? We drive in a car has what? A blind spot. People, we have blind spots. And we have to know and be okay with saying, I don't know everything. I'm not going to see everything. I'm in the moment. Let me be around people to listen. What am I hearing consistently, right? We may not like the answer. Right. I didn't like when people walk around and tell me, why you look so mad? I'm like, I'm going to the store. What do you mean, why am I looking mad? I'm minding my business. But when I start hearing the same thing from different people who don't know me, now I need to start looking inward. Right. There's a blind spot that I'm not paying attention to. Right. And so now I need to ask questions. What are you seeing? Right. Being okay with the feedback. Okay, something happened and I need to start digging deeper. How did my day start off? Did I even start my day off well? Did I start my day off rushing? Right? So what I'm going through today, I'm looking stressed, right? Because that's how I started my morning. Maybe I need to get up a little bit earlier and just kind of focus and be present. But we have blind spots that we have to pay attention to and check in with people around us.
But when you do that, sometimes people get so defensive because they're being reminded of their blind spots, you know, or it could trigger conversations in your own head. And I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience here, where I start going down that rabbit hole of, see, there I go again. See, I should have done. See, I didn't do. You know, so how do you balance that so that you can start to change that narrative in your brain? Obviously, before I come to see you. But
right. Understand. So we have to understand what are our own consequences. And we get to determine our own consequences, right? At one point when I'm going through life and I'm navigating the way I'm navigating, there was no consequence for me, right? I'm going through school. I'm looking for jobs. How someone is feeling about me looking angry, it didn't bother me. But until I got to the point past school where now I want to look at, am I going to get married? Am I going to meet someone? When I want something closer and now someone's saying, you look at me, now I'm starting to feel a consequence, right? Once I get that consequence, now I'm saying, now I need to, this is not how I want my life to live, right? Now I'm in my mid-20s and no relationship has cultivated so far in school. All them people in college, ain't nobody came found me, right? And I'm thinking, okay, now I'm starting to feel a pressure. So we need to understand and say, what is my own consequence? We get to decide that. No one's going to decide it for us. If you're okay with people saying something or some label that doesn't fit you, but you're okay with that, or maybe you're like, you know what, I hear it, but I don't care. Okay, it's not a consequence for you. Once you understand and you're okay with your own consequences, that's what's going to change. Consequences, pain is going to change behavior, not pleasure. Right? Because people think because I want something, it's going to make me change. No, I wanted a boyfriend for a long time. It ain't happened for about 8 years. I wanted it all I want to, right? But the consequences of how I was viewed said, oh, this is why I'm not getting the pleasure that I want. It's because I haven't addressed the pain first, right? The consequences led me to change behavior. The pleasure and desire of what I wanted meant nothing.
So when do you get to a place or does something catastrophic have to happen before you say, okay, I need to go see someone professionally. I need to go really delve more into what's happening with me? Or does it just come naturally for some people and then others have to have something catastrophic before they come see someone like you?
I wouldn't encourage waiting until something catastrophic happens. Back in the day when I used to do marriage counseling and I would ask a couple, well, how long have you been dealing with this? They said 7 years. I'm like, well,
Wow.
same issue, 7 years. That's a long time. Maybe if you would have came year one, we could have got through about 5 sessions. We would have been good, right? So as soon as you know that there's something that's just off, go ahead. Maintenance is not a problem. Go see a counselor. Say, I just want to check in. We just want to check some things. We want to make sure that we're not pretending that we're okay, right? Whether it's individually or whether it's a couple. I want to make sure that we're not just floating through life. Are we living life and are we being so? Maintenance is completely fine. There's a lot of therapists that will accept people just for maintenance. What are your goals? You know what? I just want to check in with myself. I want to make sure I have some accountability. I want to make sure I'm being asked some hard questions.
Do you find younger women are more likely to do that as opposed to, say, in their 30s, maybe early 40s, as opposed to those in their 50s, 60s and above? Or is everybody finally coming to a place where it's okay to recognize that mental health is important?
Yeah. Thankfully now, one of the positives of social media is that there is more of a push of mental health, right? And so getting mental health support is more accepting than what it was. So definitely the younger generation is coming a lot more for counseling. For me, even I focus on women a lot. I get a lot of late 20s, 30s, and 40s. Those are the majority of clients that I have calling me. Now, when I put out stuff and there's people kind of later on, they're like, yeah, I'm past that. Yeah, I'm too old now. Yeah, that'd been nice for me back in the day, but now I'm not going to worry about it. I say, hey, whatever your happiness is, I support you.
There you go. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about mental health, and we're talking about your mental health, and especially if you are a high-achieving woman out there who may be struggling a little bit and you just don't want people to know. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Talk to me about imposter syndrome. What is that?
So imposter syndrome is when we think we don't belong, when we think we're not good enough, right? And so most people, when we're going to something new, there's always going to be that maybe I shouldn't be here. You know what? Maybe I'm out of my comfort zone. But if we're doing something new, you should be uncomfortable. Right?
Because it's new.
Because it's new, right? It should be uncomfortable. It should scare you, right? Imposter syndrome says it's going to stop me though, right? Now we're giving into the imposter syndrome. I'm not going to do this, right? We're letting that internal dialogue stop us from the behavior instead of leaning into that curiosity. Let me see what's going to happen. What's the worst that can happen? Probably nothing, right? Maybe you're not going to be like, I don't like this, but I tried it, right? But imposter syndrome says I'm not going to do this at all.
So it's very limiting.
Yes.
Then in terms of, so there are women who will say, especially in the workplace, that face racism, they face sexism, microaggressions, and so forth. Is that a stressor, particularly for Black women, that can also take us over the top in terms of our mental health and our mental well-being?
It can, because we can show up being inauthentic because we're trying to fight perceptions, right? I want to make sure I'm not coming across too aggressive, make sure I'm not being seen as assertive. So we have to be mindful of how we're speaking, right? And so I come from corporate, working in corporate, and even being a supervisor, clinical supervisor in the corporate area. And so in being in that leadership role, I had to be mindful of how I'm speaking with, I'm in the military, speaking with officers and speaking to people in leadership, but I'm still going to be me, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be clear, concise, and factual. Right? I'm not going to lean on my emotions because my passion can come across as assertive and aggressive to the outsider, but I'm going to be clear and I'm going to be consistent, but I'm also going to make sure I'm being concise. So I ask myself these internal questions. What is it that you want? Does it matter? And is it realistic? And if I can get a yes to all three of those, then I'm sharing.
You're going to be okay and go forward. So that would be the advice that you would give to people, to ask those questions.
Ask and answer.
Ask and answer those questions. So when you decide, I really need to go sit down and talk to somebody, I need some help to help navigate all of this. How do you find a Charese Josie? I mean, in other words, how do you know who to connect with? Is it critical to have a woman of color, for example, or a person of color to be your therapist, or can anybody fill the role? What do you look for?
Right. And I think race is a preference, right? So for me, I look for anyone that can help me, right? That's what I look for. Can you help me? But when I go look for therapists, and what I encourage other people to do when they look for therapists, most therapists have a profile somewhere. Either they have a website or they're on a directory. Read that directory and see what do they specialize in. And is there some consistency in what they specialize in? So, for example, if a therapist has on their site, hey, I specialize working with children and adults, I would pause there. Because that's two different populations, two different needs, two different complete expertise. So if you're doing play therapy and you work with Alzheimer's, you can't help me because I'm not sure if you know who you are, right?
Gotcha.
I would pass on that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And what else should you look for?
Other things to look for is one is availability of time, right? I always tell clients, I don't want you coming to therapy to be another stressor for you. These are the hours that I see clients. Does that work with your schedule? Because if you're rushing to see your therapist and then rushing back to work or rushing back, you're not calm, you can't be focused, right? And so I make sure clients are aware, this is when I see them, how does your schedule work? When do you typically work? Does this align with your schedule? It should not be a stressor.
Is that one of the reasons why people tend to say, never mind, I won't focus on myself because I don't have time to go sit down and talk to somebody?
They don't have time, right? Now, thankfully, I don't say because of COVID, there's a lot more telehealth options now, right? Which makes it more accessible now. But there are therapists that work in the evenings. Some work on weekends. So everyone's not 9 to 5 during the day. There are therapists that have late evenings and weekend hours. But what's their availability? And ask some questions. The other thing that I encourage people to do is make sure that you can hear your therapist, right?
What do you mean?
You want someone that's going to give you guidance and not advice. I want you to guide me. I don't want you to tell me what you think.
So give me an example.
So I don't want you to tell me to leave him. Don't tell me you should leave your man. Maybe
that's advice.
That's advice. I don't want your advice about whether I should leave my man or not, right? But a guidance may say, okay, so when you notice these experiences with your spouse or your husband, what comes up for you? What do you experience? Guide me to my own answer.
But Charese, you bring up a really good point. If someone is already feeling like they are responsible for everybody else and not for themselves, or putting themselves last, how do you get them to recognize that they are important, as part of your therapy?
So what I do with clients to get them to know is, one, I notice language, right? So one client, really sweet. Every time I ask her how she's doing, she'll say, good, good, good. I said, are you on your computer? I said, yeah. I said, pull up a browser. Type in good and tell me, give me that cinnamon. Read me some words, right? And so she went, I said, which one resonates with you? And she picked out some other words and good. So the next time I saw her, I said, I want to check in with you since our last session. She said, and she stopped and she came up with a different word, right? This time I think she said, I'm fine, right? But for her, that's progress. I said, okay, because you notice the pattern, right? And we just want to notice patterns and we just want to disrupt them. What comes out? I don't know. You don't know. We're just going to be curious. When it comes out, we'll deal with that. But as you start to noticing your own patterns and say, I'm noticing my thought processes. I'm noticing my limiting beliefs. I'm noticing my triggers. Okay. I always bring clients back to the internal. We can talk about the external all day. This person made me mad. This person said this. Great. And we can't control any of those people who's not in the room, right? But I share with them, I said, when we're here, it's you and I, and there's no rules. We get to break all cultural rules if we want to. Mm-hmm. We get to do all these things.
So let's talk about when you're in your office or your telehealth or however they're interacting with you. What should people expect who have never been to therapy? Because I think, if you think about what you see on TV, you're not going to go in there and lay on the couch, or maybe you do.
Right.
But what's the expectation that you should walk into therapy? Because you're not there to fix it all, right, but you're there to help them to explore what's happening. Is that correct?
Yes. So one thing I would encourage clients to do when you're finding therapists, ask the therapist how they work. How do you typically work with people with my particular concern? Ask that question, because therapists are very different. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a trauma therapist, a trauma-informed therapist. And so I tell clients, we can meet for a long time and you don't ever have to tell me the story. A client came in, I knew the topic of why she came in, but I didn't know the details. We went weekly, 8 months. 8 months in, I finally knew the details.
Wow.
Because she felt safe enough to share, but I was able to work with her because it was how she was responding to the experience that we were dealing with, right? So I'm getting her to connect with her emotions more. You don't have to tell a story. Actually, in fact, in the trauma world, I advise clients saying, you know what? We can talk about what's going on without you telling me the story, because I want to teach you to get out of your mind, out of your thinking, into your heart and into your body. You telling me the story keeps you in your mind and keeps you very safe. It keeps it manageable. We want to disrupt that.
Even though it's causing you problems, it keeps you safe because you're so used to being in that space.
Yes.
Is that why?
Yes.
Wow. So we got a question from Facebook from Williamsburg. Darlene wants to know, how do you encourage a friend who needs therapy to seek help?
You would tell your friend the resources, right? And this is where we go back to not giving advice, right? We just want to create that space. Do you want some support to find some resources? What are you looking for? Maybe some connections, those types of things. But usually telling somebody you need therapy, people usually get a little offended.
Throws up a big wall, right?
Throws up a big wall, right? Yeah.
So, and the other, around that same question, if you find someone, so say someone came in to see you and you guys just didn't click, how do you divorce your therapist, if you will? Yeah.
And so what I say about clients, and clients can say the same thing to therapists, is saying, I'm going to graduate you. We're not terminating. I'm going to graduate you onto something better. Right? Because it is a relationship, getting to know each other. Do you feel safe? And sometimes it works out and sometimes it does not. Right?
But how often should you try? In other words, if you walk into someone's office and right off the bat, you may feel a certain kind of way, or should you give it a couple of sessions to see if that continues or not? How do you know, this isn't working for me?
Right. So I want to say partly that's individual.
Okay.
But I would say generally, if it's someone that's just completely unprofessional, if you go to a therapist's office and the therapist texts and the therapist not looking at you, the therapist on the computer, the therapist like, excuse me, left something, or they leave you out in the waiting room for 15 minutes and so unapologetic when you bring you in the office, that might be a huge red flag where you might not want to give it a chance, right? But if it's a therapist, you say, you know what, this therapist means well, but I don't feel like I'm getting the support that I need. I would encourage people to have a conversation. And it's not for the therapeutic relationship, but it's to teach you and tap into your own courage of saying, I can have hard conversations. And if I know I'm not going to see this therapist again, this is a good time for me to practice having a hard conversation. Because when I move to the next therapist, my personal life, my professional life, guess what? We're still going to have courageous, hard conversations. Why not do it with a therapist that you think means well, just isn't a good fit for you? great time to practice having a hard conversation.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about women leaders in mental health with Charese Josie. She's a licensed clinical social worker and therapist who specializes in treating adult women leaders through her practice, CJ Counseling and Consulting. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call. What has been your experience in therapy? Have you decided to go? Are you looking for a therapist? Give us a call and let's talk about it. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So people will say, if you want to get something done, ask a busy woman, right? But you say you have to learn to set boundaries.
Yes.
What's a boundary, and who are we setting boundaries for, ourselves or for other people?
Our boundaries are teaching people how we want to be treated, right? And one of the things when I talk to people about boundaries does not always have to be said. We think we have to have a conversation to tell people, I don't like this, I don't want this. Well, not all the time. You can actually create an atmosphere to say that this does not work for me, right?
Wow.
To maintain a relationship, I encourage people to do it in the affirmative. I'll give you an example. When I was supervising, I had this worker used to come to work really, really early in the morning, maybe about 2 hours before I would get there. So she's all ready to go, waiting for me to get there to tell me her questions. I'm walking in with my 5 bags. Don't judge me, but I'm walking in with my 5 bags, and she's coming meeting me at the door. And she's like, Charese, and she's going off. And I said, when I get settled, I'll come and talk to you. She said, okay. And she's still going. I said, when I get settled, I'll come talk to you. She's still going. I says, I'll let her go. She followed me into my office. I'm turning on my computer. I'm putting my lunch away. I'm doing all this stuff, right? And once I get settled, I turned around, looked at her. I said, okay, what did you say? And she said, I said, listen, I told you to wait. You chose not to. But now I'm available to listen. So go ahead and start over. So then her question became really short and concise.
Back to that concise.
Right? Short and concise. And then she did maybe 1 or 2 more times. I did the same thing, right?
So consistency to the boundary is also important.
Consistency and keeping it very short, right? So I had another employee who used to send me faithfully nasty emails, which I always thought was interesting because she was right across the hall. I'm like, I can see you. But so I would go to her and I said, hey, I got your email. Pull it up and let's talk. And the first time I did it, she looked a little shook, right? Right, like, I said, no, because I want to teach you that we're going to have conversations. You're not going to send me an email and I'm not going to respond to you, especially when you're right across the hall. Like, that was a little silly. But probably the 3rd time I did that, I said, hey, I got your email again, pull it up and talk. And she said, why don't you tell me what it said? I said, just why don't you pull it up and let's talk about it. After that, she didn't do it anymore. Right. So instead of me saying, you're not going to send me emails or I'm going back and forth with her, no, I'm going to teach her that my boundary is, I'm open to having hard conversations. If you don't like something I said and did, please come and let's talk about it. I can't guarantee it's going to change, but I'm open to talk about it depending on what it is. But I'm not going to foster an environment where I feel like I'm put in a position to defend myself or argue with anyone. No one on this face of this earth I'm arguing with. Not happening.
So if you aren't as strong as you, in terms of that, what are some steps or what should you think about in terms of trying to set boundaries? Are you looking at them from your perspective, or are you looking at them from the perspective of someone who is doing something that's making you uncomfortable?
Looking at it from my perspective, we always get to set the standard of how our life looks like, right? And so I started to ask clients, I said, how do you want to feel? Right? Not how you want to look. How do you want to feel? Right? So for me, I'm like, I want a day of peace, right? I want to be productive. I want to give and serve. I also want to have enough emotional energy for my children and my husband when I get home. That's how I want my day to feel. So if I would have engaged into that email back and forth, that would have took up my time, my emotional energy and space. Because once that was done, I have to do what now? Decompress. That's more time. That goes against how I want my day and my life to look like. So I'm not going to give into that because now I'm betraying myself, right? So I get to set the standard, but I don't have to explain that to everybody how I'm going to set the standard. I'm going to show you.
And I think that's a really important part, that people think that they have to say, here's my boundary,
Right.
as opposed to, as you just said, I'm going to show you where the boundaries are. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. David joins us from Norfolk. Hi, David. You're on the air.
Miss Emily, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's good seeing you at the Clay Jenkinson thing.
Oh, thank you.
My question is for your guest. I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
That's okay.
Anyway.
It's Charese Josie.
Okay, Dr. Josie, my question is, there's a YouTube video with a black therapist saying she will no longer see black male clients. My question is, do you think that's unprofessional, and why or why not?
I don't think it's unprofessional. Now, I don't know her why. But therapists who, we call it niche down, right, and have a target audience are more likely to have an expertise. And so I do encourage people to look for therapists that have an expertise. There are therapists who are called general practitioners, and they'll just see people with different issues, and that's fine. But if that's her preference, that's good. I don't know her why. So I know there's a male therapist, and he refuses to see women. But his why was because women would come into his office half naked. So to protect his license and his career, he said, I no longer see women for that issue. Now, I target women, but I do have a handful of male clients. And sometimes men come and they need a safe space to come and want that female therapist, and that's completely fine.
Thanks, David, for the call. Let's see. Harold joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Harold. You're on the air.
Obviously, it's nice to be with you guys. It's Dr. Josie, correct?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So, in my workplace, I'm in the military, so I just want to say I work with a lot of female leaders, some of color, and as a biracial man myself, right? Not that that qualifies me for any particular situations. I struggle to personally get these women to understand their value and their role, and it's hard to push that without having experienced, any kind of like gender inequality or something like that. So, someone coming from my side of the pond, how do you recommend like a really good approach, appropriate, of course, to empower these people and make sure that I'm being properly sympathetic and balancing empathy at the same time?
So, as an employee, or are you over them, or are they? I'm trying to understand the dynamic. Are they the supervisors over you, or are you over them?
They supervise the majority of our group, but I guess I also supervise them.
I see. So you're equal. You're equal in terms of ranking and so forth. But you're saying you want to help empower them to do more. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we understood what you were asking.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. Do you know enough to know that they don't feel empowered?
In a way, yes. Yeah, getting those details that can sometimes be, I guess, a little difficult, but the open communication is there. We've been working for a while. Like the love and the trust is there.
Good. So that means that you have permission to ask them more questions. This is a good opportunity for you to be more curious. So instead of telling them what they need to do or saying, hey, this is what I noticed, ask them some questions about how do you feel about leadership? How do you feel about, is it overwhelming for you sometimes? Just see what their answers are. And depending on their answers, then you know how to support them and ask them, is it okay? Because sometimes women might feel a certain way with men trying to tell them how to lead, right? But if you take them from a safe space in terms of asking them, what do you need? Why do you need this? How do you feel about some things? Then you can play off their answers and then take it from there.
Okay. Thank you so much for the call. I was just checking with Lisa to see where we need to go. Julia joins us from Chesapeake. Hi, Julia. You're on the air.
Hi. I was wanting to ask, my mother-in-law lives with me, and she clearly has, with me and my husband, she clearly has several mental illnesses. I personally think she has histrionic personality disorder. She's very hard, to set boundaries with. Every time we go to the kitchen, she just pops up and starts talking nonstop. And I was wondering if there's a way to impose some boundaries with a person that is mentally ill.
I'm not sure if your mother-in-law was formally diagnosed with mental illness, or if that's something that you're saying. But what I would encourage you to do is your husband would have to be the voice there. right? If that's his mom, he would have to be the voice because one, you want to make sure you're keeping your own boundary and that you are communicating with your husband what you need from him in terms of support and the nature of your household. And what you don't want, while you want to support your mother-in-law, you also don't want her to disrupt your household. Your husband's going to have to be the lead on that. You're going to have to step back from doing anything directly with your mother-in-law, empower your husband to do that. And ways to do that, just have some conversations about how it's impacting you as his wife, what support you need from him as his husband, your wife, and let him be the voice to his mom. And he may not see that, so it might be a blind spot for him, but it's a good way for you to notice that. But I would encourage you to do it from the standpoint of his wife, not as your mother has an issue.
Thanks so much, Julia, for the call. I hope that helped out. So how do you know if you are a professional woman, you're checking the boxes, you're taking care of everybody and so forth, but you're depressed?
Good.
What are you looking for?
So this is going to be a challenging one in terms of doing, because I know professional women are like, tell me how, right? And I think it's Maya Angelou who says, you have to know where to go when your soul needs healing. Mm-hmm. And I encourage women so much, do the very thing that you're uncomfortable doing. I used to say faithfully that I'm an introvert and I don't speak in public. Do y'all know where I am right now? Right? Does anyone know where I am right now?
You are not an introvert.
I'm 100% an introvert. Right? And I said that because I had to get to the level of after my divorce, I said I have to learn how to trust my judgment again, because that was a high price that I gave away. I'm not going to say it took from me. I gave that away. And so in order to get my judgment back is that I had to learn to trust my own judgment. And that means I had to learn where to go to where my soul needs healing, where I'm not calling a girlfriend every time, or I'm not saying, hey, go here. I'm going to do this by myself. So I joined a direct selling company to sell handbags. I'm not a salesperson, but it challenged me, one, to meet people, to talk in public, and to network. Right? It was nothing I intended to do for a long period of time. I just wanted to show myself that you can do something new. So anytime you're saying, how do I get out of this? How do I do something? Where does your soul go to need healing? And that means you have to try something different. It could be the time of day, which means you have to try something different. I would go to the ocean front. I joined Groupon was my friend back in those transition years. So I would go on Groupon and see, what do you have now? And so one was a exercise 5 a.m. on the ocean front. So I would get up every morning. I would drive to the exercise class right on the beach, right in the sand. And on the beach, I would watch the sun come up as we're exercising on the sand. Very peaceful. That's when I learned, I said, oh, outdoors, I feel better. I had to learn that. So I'm a spring and summer girl.
But where do you get the strength to do it, to take that first step?
Yeah, the consequences, right? So for me, the consequence, I came from high school, college license. I'm successful by all intents and words, but I was miserable, sad, and couldn't sleep. My face broke out in so much acne over stress. I'm trying Proactive, Clearasil, Neutrogena, everything, right? So the consequences for me got really, really high, where I said, I don't know what's coming, but I know I can't stand here. Let me do something different, because what I'm doing isn't working. Different, it can be fun. It can be curious, and that's how I saw it, not scary. I was curious. If I don't like it, guess what? I could stop doing it. And now I get to try something different. Right? Now, when I tried that boot camp class and they had me jumping on the tables, I only went to that class one time. I said, this one not for me.
So what I hear from you, Charese, through all of this is giving yourself permission to know yourself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is so powerful.
There you go.
Wow. Let's talk to Amy in Virginia Beach. Hi, Amy. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara. I just wanted to say I look forward to your show every week.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I had to divorce a therapist once. My therapist that I had for a long time suddenly took ill and had to retire. And so I was trying out different ones. And I went to this lady about 4 times. She wanted me to tell her what I wanted to work on. I told her that I had a drinking problem and that I had an overeating problem, compulsive overeater. And she just would not believe me. She believed me that I was an alcoholic, but she wouldn't believe about the overeating because I'm thin. And after about the fourth time, I just said, this isn't going to work. And so she called me to ask me why I said that. And I said, well, it's because you didn't believe me when I said I was a compulsive overeater. And I said, why did you believe me when I told you I was an alcoholic? And she said, well, that's not something people make up. And I said, well, why would someone make up that they were a compulsive overeater? And she said, well, I guess they wouldn't. And so hopefully she got something out of that and maybe would be a better therapist to the next person who tells her something that she thinks can't be true. But it ended up being a positive experience for me because I felt like I ended up where I needed to be.
Mm-hmm. And you spoke up for you.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Amy, this is Charese. I wanted to thank you, one, for your courage of sharing here and also speaking up for yourself and the therapist. And hopefully it was a change agent for her, but also for you of, I can speak up for myself and I know who I am. I know what I need. And the therapist showed you really early on that she couldn't support you. And I'm glad that she showed you early on that she didn't waste a lot of your time, right? So I just want to appreciate and acknowledge your courage for showing up for you here and at that time.
Amy, thanks so much for the call. We appreciate it. Let's talk to Barbara in Hampton. Hey, Barbara, I like your name.
Hi, Barbara. Oh boy! First, I was going to ask if she was available for Is she accepting clients for counseling? And then as I begin to listen, I'm like, okay, I have a question for her.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
Okay,
and we'll tell you how to get in touch with her later on.
Okay. My question is, I've been in this space for I'm 64, so I've been in this place for quite a while. I'm trying to find out how do I successfully transition from where I am as far as my mindset into another mindset.
So she's saying she's been here throughout the majority of her life. Now she wants to do something different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, Barbara, I'm glad that you even noticed that. Because I tell people at least every 10 years, we all change. Not focus on women. So I always say every 10 years, a woman's changed. Right. If I look back on who I was 10 years ago, I would have hoped that I would change. Right. And so we all have this opportunity when that change comes and we notice it. We have an opportunity to either lean into that change or we get really scared and we stay who we are. Right. And so that's how we know sometimes when people get older, we're like, oh, they're very old. They're older and they're wiser. They're sharing their knowledge. They're trying to educate. Or you meet someone who's older and you're like, oh, this person did not take their time to heal, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a great opportunity that you notice now to say, you know what, this is a new part of me that I get to develop and explore. And if you don't know how to do that, that's actually good news because that means you get to try a whole lot of different things and see what you like. What you like, you keep. What you don't like, you throw out. If you like something more and it feeds your soul, keep doing it. Keep doing some more and keep trying it and tweaking. But you get to develop a whole new part of you, and that's very exciting.
Does that help you, Barbara?
It does. It did. It did. I mean, because I'm just a chronic avoider. I avoid a lot. I avoid doing something. I just had to break through.
Which is, you know what? And that's the point we were just making. The whole idea of giving yourself permission to know you, because I'm the same way. I'm an avoider, and so and we will. Charese will tell everybody how to reach her. So keep listening, okay? All right. Thanks so much for the call. We appreciate that. Let's go to Kelly in Norfolk. Hi, Kelly. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Oh, this is such a great show.
Thank you.
This is such a great show. I'm responding to your earlier question about asking people if they've been in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I, shortly before COVID, realized that the career path I had been on for almost a decade, it wasn't going to work out for me. And there was a lot of grief in that. And then COVID hit, and I had a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I was still doing my job at home with 2 children. And my partner and I were just hot potatoing back and forth like trying to, one in the bedroom working while the other one is like taking care of the kids and trying, doing all the things, right? Trying to be like, our jobs transitioned to completely online. And yet we were still trying to give our children a relatively happy, normal childhood while also like fearing this giant global pandemic, and also, and not really taking time to take care of ourselves because we were so focused on our kids and the limited amount of time we could trade off to work. And so I didn't realize it, but it happened really slowly. It's like that frog in the pot analogy, where like the frog, if you put a frog in a pot of regular water, and then turn the heat on slowly, the frog will stay in the pot. But if you put a frog in a boiling pot, it'll just hop right out.
Right.
Like I was in the pot that the heat was slowly being turned up. And eventually I just got so anxious because I'd be trying, my first grader would be doing her online schooling. I would be trying to work, and just doing things like make dinner and really basic things became extremely anxiety producing. And I finally went and saw a therapist online, a telehealth therapist. I recommended, I looked up someone specifically who worked with grief because I was feeling so much grief. And a few sessions in, she was like, you don't have to, but I recommend you might try some anti-anxiety medicine just to help us as you're working on new coping mechanisms, kind of give you a little boost. And I was like intimidated by that at first and not sure. And I realized I had a lot of internalized biases, like, oh, that's okay for other people, but I don't need it. But then when I was like, okay, I think I really I need to try something, anything, it's not working. And it was so amazing. And it's not a cure-all, but the anti-anxiety medicine really did help me so much. And then meanwhile, I've been learning coping mechanisms with my therapist, like meditation and other things. And it just, now when I talk to people about it, I'm like, the only regret I have is that I didn't start taking anti-anxiety meds and going to therapy earlier.
Well, Kelly, we are so happy that it's working out for you. Let me let Charese respond. Thanks so much for the call. We appreciate it.
Kelly, I appreciate you normalizing that. Some people shy away from any type of medication of that sort. They feel like, oh, no, I'm not crazy. I don't need that. I just need some skills. So I'm glad that you tapped into that and that you tried it and found out that was best for you. And also glad that you shared that here on this platform, of letting people know and saying doesn't mean that you're any less. It's just additional support with therapy and lifestyle changes. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, because this is something that is huge, particularly in the Black community, and that is the relationship or the intersection of spirituality and therapy. Because, we're quick to say, take it to the Lord in prayer. Right. And you don't need to go sit down and tell somebody all your business. Right. Where do you stand in terms of how they come together, and that you can respect both and utilize both in order to help you?
Right. So I am definitely a God girl. And I was sharing earlier, my father-in-law is a pastor and I'm married to a preacher's kid. Now, I didn't grow up in the church, so I'm not really sure how all that happened, but here we are. But God and therapy is a great combination. It really is a great combination. And we were talking earlier about, I don't know if we were on air or off air, but just the complexities of who we are. There's different parts of us. And if we can tap into all those parts with our relationship with spirituality, with the relationship with God, and then our own with therapy and having some practical, how do I put this in practice? And then you're working with the therapist. That blend is awesome. It really is.
So you don't have to ignore one in order to do the other.
No.
So if you're a professional woman sitting out there right now trying to decide, do I spend the hour and the money, or do I just try to power through this on my own? Can you power through it on your own?
You can, but you have to ask how much it's going to cost you. How much is it going to cost you? And I don't mean just financially. How much is it going to cost you in time? How much is it going to cost you in emotions? How's it going to cost you in relationships? How's it going to cost you in your sleep? How's it going to cost you when it's nighttime and everything's silent, everybody's sleeping, and just you and your thoughts, right? And you answer that question yourself. If you can power through all of that, I support you.
Speaking of sleeping or the house being quiet and powering through your thoughts, do you have some advice for people? How do you stop the negative conversation in your brain? I mean, I know there's different things that happen, but in general, are there things that you can do to switch off the negative and turn on the more affirming?
Okay, I'm going to sound like a therapist because I am. Okay, so this is I want you to ask yourself, who are you talking to? Are you talking to the you now? Are we talking to a younger you? Are you talking to a you who you thought should have been a certain place now? Who are you talking to in terms of yourself? And then is that what that person needs? Right? Maybe I may have expected my life to look a different way now. And so I'm mad that it's not. First, have I said in any form of gratitude? But then what part of me am I talking negatively to? But maybe that part actually needs some consoling and needs some grace, right? That could actually be a part of me that's my protective part that might me say, Charese, wait a minute, this is not a good idea, right? Maybe I might need that part, right? Because I need that part of me to be like, wait a minute, use your insight, use your intuition, use some common sense here, right? And so maybe I don't want to speak negatively. So if we're talking negatively about ourselves and we have all these woes, first, I would encourage you first to sit in some gratitude because there's something that you're grateful for. Even if you have to dig deep for it. I'm grateful for these shoes. Okay, let's be grateful for the shoes, right? If you have to dig deep, that's fine. But no, when you're talking that internal dialogue, it's going to go with you for the day, relationships, and then what message is it carrying for you? Because if you speak negatively, that's where it's going to be left with. But it's walking with you. It's going to stay with you.
It's going to stay with you until you turn it around.
Yeah.
Ms. Charese, how do people reach you?
Awesome. All social media platforms at Charese Josie. Ain't but one that I know of, so you spell it right, you should find me. Website is CJ Counseling and Consulting. ChareseJosie.com will be up this summer. Very excited for that. So that's where I'd love to connect with you if you want with counseling or leadership consulting. So I do both.
And you also have an article coming out in a national magazine?
Yes. My Essence magazine is published. I'm going to post it tomorrow about how to find a good therapist. I know we were talking about that today. Just some things to look for. So that will be out tomorrow. And on Monday, pre-orders for my book, Two Witty Girls. That comes out on Monday. So definitely look forward to connecting with everyone.
That's great. Now spell Charese Josie so that people get it right, because I know I've spelled it wrong a couple of times.
Sure. Charese, CHARESE. Josie is JOSIE.
.com.
Yes.
That is fantastic. Charese, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we hope that you will come back and join us again soon.
Oh, I would love to.
Yeah, absolutely. And audience, there's a lot that we have to process about our mental health and well-being. So do me a favor, take some time and listen to this show again. Just go to anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. And please be sure to sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. And you can find us on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Next week on Another View, the rising cost of prescription drugs and what we can do about it. Dr. Keith Newby promises he's going to have some answers for us when he joins me next week for Another View on health. And we hope that you all will take the time to take care of your own mental health. Take care to take some time for yourself, set those boundaries, give yourself permission to be okay. It is so very, very important. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.